when you gotta give them the tight lip. Go ahead.
Now this is medieval Jews.
Now we're going into this is probably my favorite section of the slides. The medieval Jews of Europe. My favorite section, because this right here ruffles a lot of feathers. What do you mean, black Jews in Europe? What do you mean this? And just sit down, take your pen and your pad out, and come to class, brother. You'll learn. I'll probably give you some books for free. Probably not. It's a lot. But now read that.
The first source is Literature and Science by Monica Schmitz-Emans on page 149. She says, ethnological and popular literature repeatedly referred to Jews as the Negroes of Europe.
The Negroes of Europe. Go ahead.
As swarthy.
Swarthy.
African. Mulatto. Jewish. Negroid. And as members of a mongrel, dark-skinned race.
Come on, man. Read the next one, huh? Come on, man.
The next source is by Edomite, by the way. History in Black by Yov Shavit.
Yov Shavit.
On page 182. He said in medieval literature.
In medieval literature.
Y'all know what that is? I hope y'all know what age that is. Who?
Medieval. The Dark Ages.
In medieval literature, a theory prevailed in which the Jews were part of the black race.
It ain't a theory, Salakia. Go ahead.
Or were at least dark-skinned.
You see that? Next slide. We're going to keep getting into it, man. We're going to keep getting into it. We're going to bang these dudes in the head. Now look at the right side. That's Duke Frederick VII of Saxony. Look at that. That's a coin. That is not, look at that dude, bro. Come on, that's Frederick. Yeah. He said Frederick Douglass. You childish. You see that?
We created the first form of currency, by the way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So in general, I'm gonna read the source first. It's Medieval Identity Machines by Jeffrey Jerome Cohen. He's also a Jew.
Cohen.
Page 277. In general, however, Saracens and Jews were the groups most susceptible to representation as swarthy. Swarthy, which means dark skin. All right? Read. Air quotes, Ethiopian or black skinned, making such darkness a signifier of race. You see that? So this is another source. Jews were the groups most susceptible to representation as niggas. That's what they should have just said. Niggas. Black people. They should have just said it, because that's what you want to say on the low. Next source. Source of Black Jews in Africa and America by Tudor Parfit from page 16. One of y'all got this book. I don't know which one of y'all got my book, but one of y'all got this book because it's missing. I was glad I had pictures of it on my phone that I just found randomly, and I was like, ooh, one of y'all got my book, man. I'm going to find it. Yeah. Sefer Yosef al-McKenna, which boasts that we Jews are from a clean and white seed, therefore our faces are black. But you hear that? This, because a lot of people like to go into certain quotes of Jews, and when they hear pure, clean, and white seed, white meaning pure, it's an idiom. You see that? Get that in Lamentations 4. Let me prove my point. Because it's right in Lamentations 4. I believe verse 4. Let me hear it, and I know if it's that.
Lamentations chapter 4, verse 4.
Yeah.
The tongue of the suckling child.
Now, next verse. Is it verse 5? Let me see.
7.
Verse 7. Yeah.
Verse 7. The Nazarites were purer than snow.
The Nazarites are purer than snow. Watch this. Keep reading. You see that? They're white. Okay, keep reading.
They were whiter than milk.
They were whiter than milk. That means they're white, right? Keep reading.
They were more ruddy in body than rubies.
You see that? More ruddy in body than rubies. Okay. Keep reading.
Their polishing was of sapphire.
Go ahead.
Their visage.
Their what?
Their visage.
Their what?
Their visage.
Their face. Go ahead.
Is blacker than a coal.
Then what?
Than a coal.
It's blacker than a coal. So you see, what the previous verse was signifying was the purity of the Nazarites. That's it. It's all about context. It's all about Hebrew idioms. So that the same thing is happening right here in this source. All right? Now back it up. Yeah, no, start from the top again from that verse. I mean, from that source.
Sefer Yosef ha-Mekenen, which boasts that we Jews are from a clean and white good seed. Therefore, our faces are black.
So that we're from a clean and white seed, meaning we're from the pure bloodline. That's what he's expressing. That's why he says, therefore, our faces are black. We're dark skinned. Now watch what he says here. Read.
But you from the red seed of menstruation.
But you, he's talking to the fake Jews. He said, but you are from the red seed of menstruation. Go ahead.
Therefore, your visages are pale and red.
He said, therefore, you pale and red, man. You understand this?
From
Go ahead.
the 13th century Sephardic perspective.
This is from the 13th century Sephardic perspective because the real Sephardic Jews were black. Okay? That's what people have to understand. Next one.
Next source is from Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 4, the 1910 edition, on page 93.
Go ahead.
The expression blue blood is from the Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
The nobles of Castile claim to be free from all admixture.
So they claim to be free from all admixture, right? Go ahead.
With the darker blood of Moors or Jews.
Go ahead.
A proof being supposed to lie in the blue veins that showed in their fairer skin.
You see that? So they were proving that they were of what? They were clean with mixing with other people. All right? The more and more sources we bring up, you're going to be like, oh, it's only going to get deeper. Next source.
This is from Shakespeare and the Jews by James Shapiro.
Whoa, Shakespeare and the Jews. Right? Let me teach you something. Sometimes when you walk in a library or you walk in a bookstore or even Goodwill, because believe it or not, I find a lot of good books in Goodwill. You know, every time I drive by Goodwill, I do Tokyo Drift. I go into there, my rib be like, yeah, I'm looking for a book. And I be finding stuff. And they be like $5. And in my head, I'm like, you don't know what this is worth. Telling you, do it. And you'll look at a book and it'll be like ancient history of Europe. And you'll walk past it because you'll see some white lady on it. You'll see some white dude on it, right? You'll be like, whatever. Open the book up, Ak. I guarantee you're going to find something. You're going to be like, huh? This is me. I'm telling you. Read that.
This is the accumulated experience of over 100 years of travel, trade, and conquest had convinced Europeans that some of the accepted stereotypes of Jewish racial otherness, including the belief that Jews were black.
Yeah?
Needed to be qualified. When William Bremerton jotted down his impressions of the Jews in the synagogue in Amsterdam in 1635.
In Amsterdam, all right, where they're getting high. Yeah? Well, now, it's like it, yeah.
He noted that the Jewish men are most black and insatiably given unto women.
Mm-hmm.
Drawn here on contemporary prejudices linking blackness and licentiousness. And when the Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in January 1690, He also paid a visit to the synagogue there, where he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal that they were all very black men and indistinct in their reasonings as gypsies.
I want you to remember this, because all the sources I'm going to bring out today is going to tie in with a bunch of sources I'm going to bring out in the future. Okay? Continue.
By the end of the 17th century, works like the English translation of the Francis Maximilian, Missions and New Voyage to Italy, make clear that it is a vulgar error that the Jews are all black. This mission observes is only true of the Portuguese Jews.
The Portuguese Jews. The Sephardic Jews. Remember that. Look, Abadia like, ooh, because Abadia's father's from Portugal. And that's a black man. You see that? Continue.
Who, marrying always among one another.
We just read that in the previous source. They always marry the one among each other. Why? Because they didn't want to look like the people around them. If you actually study it and read more. You understand that? Right. Go ahead.
Begat children like themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race, even in the northern regions. Continue. But the Jews who are originally of Germany,
but those damn Amalekites,
those, for example, I have seen at Prague, are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen. Even Manasseh ben Israel, in his plea for the readmission of the Jews into England, offered evidence that some of the Jews in distant lands differed racially.
You see that? Showing you the difference here. Okay? Next source. Don't worry, y'all gonna get it. Just, I know y'all probably got questions. Y'all gonna get the whole PowerPoint, so don't worry. Yeah.
The first source is Mark of Distinctions: Christian Perceptions of Jews in the High Middle Ages by Irvin M. Resnick. He says, regardless of whether only Jewish men or both men and women were understood to be dark complexioned in medieval Christian perception, it remains to determine why a dark skin color should be assigned to Jews at all. For theologians, the link between dark or black skin and the blackness of sin seems assured.
Devils. Okay.
Medieval scholastic natural philosophers, however, sought causes rooted in nature. An investigation into these causes could be divided according to the medical theory of the natural, non-natural, and contranatural influences on the body. For our purposes, however, it would be simpler to divide our discussion into two: external or internal influences upon skin color.
Now, a lot of this is the beginning of what will be known later in history during this time will be the Hamitic hypothesis. Okay, we're not going to get into that. Also, future classes. But they were trying to figure out and come up with theories on why the Jews were black. This is why all of this is happening. Okay, continue. Next source.
Next source is the Sources of the Pentateuch by Samuel C. Bartlett on page 118, which says, thus the black color is found not only in individuals as the black Jews of Portugal, but in tribes, as the Bakaris on the Red Sea, whose hair and character are perfectly Semitic.
Perfectly Semitic. Go ahead.
And the white color in the brutalized descendants of certain exiled Irish of Ulster.
Exiled. Because who was ruling? Continue.
Whose features are almost of the African type.
You see this? Next. Now look at the right real quick. All right. See that coin? That Klev Vladimir the First. That's Russia. Look at him. He got braids hanging down, all that. That's a nigga. All right? Read that source, son.
This is the Mediterranean race, Italian G. Surgeon from from 1901.
Go ahead.
It's the study of the European people called the early settlers of Europe, which would be the Euro-Africans.
Which will be the what?
Euro-Africans.
Okay. Next slide.
This is the history, the destruction of the city and temple of Jerusalem, and the ruin and dispersion of the Jewish nation by Thomas Brown on page 180.
Go ahead.
The Spanish and Portuguese Jews claim their descent from the tribe of Judah.
Say it again.
The Spanish and Portuguese Jews claim their descendants from the tribe of Judah.
From the tribe of Judah. Okay. Good.
In consequence of this supposed superiority, they have not till lately married or in any way incorporated with their brethren of other nations.
They said, we ain't marrying none of y'all. Go ahead.
They had separate synagogues.
Mm-hmm.
And if a Portuguese Jew, even in England or Holland,
so where did the Jews of England come from? Portugal and Spain. Good.
married a German Jewish.
So if they married one of them Amalekites, okay, nasty little things, good.
He was immediately expelled from the synagogue.
He was expelled from the synagogue. This is what was going on in Europe, okay?
I don't know the laws of the intercourse.
Yeah. They don't know. It's a lot here.
They don't know the law.
Yeah. Hey, man. Next slide. Next slide. Go ahead, my good brother.
This is the source from the History of the Jews by Grants Henrich from 1817 to 1891, Block Phillip from 1841 to 1923, and Louis Bella, 1853 on page 389, which is three accountants of three different individuals.
Right.
The northern coast of Africa and the inhabitable regions inland were full of Jews of Spanish descent.
They were what?
Full of Jews of Spanish descent.
Now, they were full of Jews of Spanish descent, which we read the Jews of Spanish descent were what? Dark skin. Yeah.
From the northern coast of Africa, so y'all remember that.
Mm-hmm.
They had congregated there in great numbers during the century from the persecution of 1391 to their total expulsion.
Mm-hmm.
From Safi, which is the Safi, the most southwestern town of Morocco.
What? Go ahead.
To Tripoli in the northeast, there were many communities of varying numbers speaking the Spanish language.
Go ahead.
Though mostly hated.
Go ahead.
Arbitrarily treated and often compelled by petty barbarian tyrants and the uncivilized, degenerate Moorish population to wear disgraceful costume, yet prominent Jews found opportunities to distinguish themselves, to rise to high honors and acquire widespread influence.
So if these black Jews were in Europe and being despised, who was despising them? Dusty Hamites, man. Good. Next slide. Now, this is a book. I love this book. And I'm going to bring this out in the future as well. And we're going to get into some things. Because the pirates was Israelites. Okay? And it actually goes into a specific tribe. Okay? Goes into a specific tribe. Okay? Read that. The whole thing. Just read the whole thing. Why not?
Charles' treatments of Jews.
Oh, read the source.
It's called the Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean.
The Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean. Go ahead.
How a generation of swashbuckling Jews carved out an empire in the New World in their quest for treasure, religious freedom, and revenge. By Edward Chrysler.
Revenge. Revenge from what? The expulsion of the Jews of Europe. Go ahead.
Charles' treatment of Jews in his realm was consistent with the tolerance he expressed in the Declaration of Breda. London's Jews, no longer having to disguise themselves or hide their wealth, gathered each Sabbath in the rickety first-floor synagogue in Church Lane. Their place in society was endorsed by John Greenhalgh, a prominent Christian, who, having visited the synagogue in April 1662, observed in a letter to a friend.
Mm-hmm.
It says, when I was in a synagogue, I counted about 100 Jews, all merchants.
Merchants, meaning they knew how to be in the seas. Go ahead.
Not one mechanic person of them. Most were rich in apparel.
Rich in apparel. Fly garments. Right? Yeah.
With various jewels glittering. For they are
sound like Harlem. Yeah.
For they are the richest jewelers of any.
They are the richest jewelers of any, man. You understand that? Good. This can't be Amalek. Niggas wear a black suit, the same black suit for 3 weeks. That's what they do, brother. This is what they do. Stinking. I am the chosen. You seen them dance? Go ahead, Slakia. Go ahead, continue reading. You seen them? Go ahead,
They are generally black and may be distinguished from the Spaniards or native Greeks.
So they're black. Finish it up.
Their hair are more perfect raven black. They have a quick, piercing eye and strong intellect. Several of them are comely, gallant, proper gentlemen. I knew many who I saw daily upon the exchange.
Next slide.
So this is the images from the Leon's Bible.
Yeah, look at that image from the Leon's Bible, right? That don't look like white people to me. Okay? Read the source.
This is a source from Anglo-Israel.
Anglo-Israel. Okay? Like Anglo-Saxon. Angelic sons of Isaac. Okay? Read.
By William Henry Poole, page 258. He does a wonderful account into proving we're the people, by the way.
Wonderful.
Claudia Rufina, raised beneath the sun that shines on Britain's dark cerulean race. Whence comes it that thy heart is like our own, that thou hast such a beauteous form and face?
See that? So there was a dark, beautiful race in London.
Honoring our women.
See that?
It's like Muhammad did.
Right. Next slide.
First source is when Scotland was Jewish. By Elizabeth.
When Scotland was Jewish. Damn. Yeah.
By Elizabeth Caldwell Hirschman on page 59.
We're going to be in this book a little bit. Huh? Good.
The name Douglas. Dark stranger. And Gaelic. And may have originated from the Mediterranean complexion of the family founders M. Brown in 1988.
Yeah, that's the quote. Okay.
The Douglases, so named for their dark coloring,
Go ahead.
were the dominant force on the borders of England and Scotland from 1300 all the way to 1455. From M. Brown in 1988. Family portraits attest to their Mediterranean physiognomy.
Who children was the family of the Douglas? Do y'all know? Who descended from the family of the Douglas? King James. Yeah. Next one out. No, my bad. We missed something at the other slide. My bad. The last quote. Salakia.
So it's the same source but page 61. Notable in this genealogy is the relatively frequent marriages with the royal Stuart family, which regarded itself as being of Jewish ancestry. Now,
Stuart is a rendition of swarthy or swart. Okay? Meaning dark skin. Go ahead.
Marriage to cousins of the same name, Douglas.
Go ahead.
And alliances with other families believed to be of Jewish descent.
Next slide. Now look at the right? That's Saint Sophia. That's in the Saint Sophia Cathedral in Novgorod. And that's a Russian icon. Okay? You see that right there? Read the source.
So this is the same female in source, and she says in 1306, for a variety of political, religious, and economic reasons.
This is all the same source when Scotland was Jewish. Go ahead.
The Jews were expelled from France. And not coincidentally, we see families such as the Black Douglases arriving in Scotland.
You see that? So during feuds in France, they began to go where? Into England, into Scotland, and began to form certain empires there. Okay?
This expulsion followed close on the heels of Edward's I's banishment of Jews from England and Gascony in 1290. And there were smaller banishings of Jews from the cities in Germany and Italy. However, as Benbassa writes on page 15, the expulsion in France affected a greater number of Jews, almost 50,000 persons. Exiles found refuge in Lorraine, Alsace, the Rhine Valley, even Poland and Hungary, and the Duchy of Burgundy, the Dauphiny, Savoy, Provence, the Comtat Venaissin, and Spain. We propose that several of these Jewish families made their way as well to Scotland, a possibility we will discuss in detail in chapters 7 and 9.
Next slide, Al.
So this is also the same source.
Same source when when Scotland was Jewish. Yeah.
From Spain, they took a merchant ship bound for the coast of Scotland. They landed at a place called Solway Firth, and finding the country Scotland in peace under the Protestant reign of King James VI, approximately between 1567 and 1603, who then became King James I, King of England through 1603 all the way to 1625. They determined to settle there. After finding a large landholder, he being a wealthy bishop of the place, they purchased from him a large estate. They then sent back to their native land for other relatives and friends, and in a few years became numerous and prosperous. But in order to acquire full title of this land, it was necessary that they should gain the consented signature of the king to their purchase. The king, upon signing their titles, imposed the following condition: that the three brothers should, when the king required it, each send a son with a troop of 20 men to aid in the wars of the king. Our forefathers were of dark skin with deep penetrating eyes. Although naturally of dark complexion, and mingling with the blue-eyed belles of Scotland.
And mingling with the white people of Scotland, what began to happen?
Through 13 generations, the younger generations have shown many instances of the fair hair and blue eyes of their mother's family.
You see that? This is what began to happen. Go ahead.
Thus, the blue eyes and the black eyes appear in almost every family.
Next source. Through the mingling. And this is why the Sephardic Jews ain't want none of that. Now you see this on the right-hand side. This is Peter weeping after defying Christ 3 times. This is in the Bristol Psalter. Okay? Look at him. Looking like Yawasap from Sons of Thunder. Look at him. Look at him, man. Yeah, go into the source, huh?
This is Ancient and Modern Britons.
Good.
Ancient and Modern Britons by David McRitchie on page 205. And none among them of whatever race excelled that famous Scot, the Black Douglas. He belonged to the oldest sect of his clan, that known as the Black Douglases, a term of which many of the leaders were no doubt Scots. Although the more distinguished were chiefly non-Scottish, proves to be tautological when analyzed, since the black signifies the black, swarthy man.
You see that? Next slide. All this is making sense so far, right? Okay. You see that on the right? This is also from the Bristol Psalter, right? The Chaldean soldiers with Hebrew captives. So you see black on black crime. It's just both ain't Israelites. You understand that? Go ahead.
This is from the source of Nature Knows No Color line on page 71. Ancient Welsh folktales certainly do mention black people. Salakia, Welsh folktales do mention black people, unmistakably Negroes. In the story of Peredur and the Mabunajin, the blacks mentioned therein might be Salurs, another ancient Welsh poem. Wadlud Imor tells of a robbery between white and black.
So you see, even in their folklores and myths and oral traditions, the Welsh, which is ancient Wales, right next to England, they had blacks within their folktales, and they were even of dark skin. Okay. Next source. Now you see the right? Right? This is also from the Bristol Psalter. Okay? You see that's King David. That's supposed to be King David in the middle. You see that? Yeah.
The Untold Story, revised edition by Edgar Shaw, is a source. In the year AD 1492, January 2nd, the Moorish stronghold of Granada surrendered to the armies of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. For the first time since the year 711, all of Spain was in Christians' hands. The decree to expel the Jews from Spain was signed on March 31st in one of the corridors of the Great Alhambra, the palace of the Moorish kings of Granada. The motive given for the expulsion of the Jews was conceived that they corrupted the Marianos Jews converted to Christianity by privately encouraging them in disloyalty to Christianity.
The Marianos Jews, the Moranos, the Morenos. This is why Spanish people say Moreno, because it goes to a secret Jew. That's what that means, if anybody didn't know that. All right? Next source. Now, once again, on the right, this is a fresco from Via Latina Catacomb in Rome. This is 320 AD. Abraham raises his son to slay Isaac. Those are black men. Okay, this is in Rome. Okay? Read the source.
So the source is from the Patriot.co, and it says, after the downfall of the Moors in Granada, Spain, the white countries of Europe took a special interest in Scotland because there was a thriving black population there. Unlike the Moors in Southern Europe, who were Muslims, the Scottish blacks were Christians and therefore could not be victimized on grounds of religion.
You see that? So they couldn't be victimized on what the certain laws that were being passed where? In the papacy in Rome. Okay? Because what Rome was doing was using a religious grounds to expose Jews and the Muslims out of Europe. But it was hard for them to do that in England. That's why England was one of the last strongholds of the blacks of Western Europe, because they were Christian. You understand? Next source.
This is the textbook of the origin and history of the colored people, with an anti-slavery collection from Hartford in 1941 by a Skinner printer. It says the Portuguese who planted themselves on the coast of Africa a few centuries ago have been succeeded by descendants blacker than the Africans.
You see that? So the Portuguese are also known to be blacker than Africans. Okay?
A stronger case is still to be found in the fact that the descendants of a colony of Jews, originally from Judea, Southern Kingdom. We just read those precepts earlier. Go ahead. To the coast of Africa are black.
Are what?
Are black.
Are black. Next source. Now this right here. Early Spanish manuscript illumination by John Williams. Okay? We're going, this one right here heavy. Okay? Go to the next, now this is, we're going to show what's in this book. All right? Go to the next one, man. Next slide. Now I want you to take a good look at that. I want you to take it. Can you see what's highlighted? No, right? Sure? I think I took it out. Oh, he could zoom in. All praises.
I got it.
All right, read what's highlighted.
It says a little further on in the manuscript, monstrous white men and blacks.
Monstrous white men and what?
Blacks.
Now this is explaining the top right-hand corner. You see all those black men in red? The monstrous white man is on a goat. That's how because they were supposed to be monstrous white men on a goat. Why? Because they're signifying certain prophecies in the book of Revelation. Read it out. Read it again.
White men, monstrous white men and blacks carrying curved sabers and an emblazoned shield march toward the Antichrist.
March toward the Antichrist. That's when you go in the bottom. What's the Antichrist? The Vatican. And they're white people. You understand that? So the black Jews and the Moors and the Christians of Europe, they knew these. They knew who the devil was. They knew that these people were the Antichrist. You understand that? This is right there in their book. This is in their book, man. This is important right here.
What's the name of that book again?
That's the early Spanish manuscripts. It's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And if you find one for cheap, it ain't the real one. I'm gonna tell you right now. It's like the 13th tribe. They'd be like, I got the 13th tribe. I pick on Barack all the time for this. It's like 70 something pages missing from your 13th tribe. No lie. Oh yeah, there is, brother. It wasn't $15. Okay, the real 13th tribe is a lot of money. Go to the next one. Now look at this. Same book. This is the same book. Now look closely. Who's fighting who? You got a bunch of black people on the right side with their kingdom fighting white invaders. You see that? With their garments on, their headpieces, they got their scarves. Nothing new under the sun. I didn't make this book. Just saying. Next source. Everybody know this, the Russian icons. I just want to show how he's painting black images white. Look behind him, the ones he didn't touch yet. Look at what he's painting. Another book that's very expensive.
$700.
Next source.
I tried to get it.
Salakia.
Too much for me.
Now you see that? That's the Moors of Yorkshire. This is in the Fairborn's crest. That's where this book is from. I actually have that book. Right? Now look at the crest of people in Europe. Look at the Moors. You see that? Those are all black people. Huh? Read the source.
Those are British families, by the way.
British families, right.
So the source is from Tacitus.
Tacitus.
Tacitus Alice, translated by M. Hutton. The swarthy faces of the Silurs, the curly quality in general of their hair, and the position of Spain opposite their shores attest to the passage of Iberians in old days and the occupation by them of these districts.
See that? This is a very old source of somebody who's Greek, accounting to dark-skinned people. That the reason why it's called the Iberian Peninsula, Iberian meaning Hebrew. Okay, Ibar meaning Hebrew. That's why it's called the Iberian Peninsula. And who was there? Dark-skinned people. Next source. This might be the last one for medieval. Oh, no, I guess not. Slovakia. Well, you see that? That's the, I don't know how to say that Russian joint. Shalakovich, whatever. State History and Art Museum. Look at that. These are Russian icons. Okay?
These are museums of all the Russian artists.
Yes.
You can't take your black ass on that.
Yeah, read that.
This is from Delaware's Forgotten Folk, University of Pennsylvania, 1943, by C.L. Westlaker. In 711 AD, the Moors crossed Straits of Gibraltar and began their conquest on the Spanish peninsula. After governing Spain for 800 years, the Moors were defeated by the Christians, and many of their descendants were sold to the slave traders, who brought them in shackles to America.
Who what?
Who brought them in shackles to America.
Hold on. So black Moors in Europe were brought to shackles to America. But the Moors were Jews. They were Muslims. They were Christians. But they were all black. So how are you going to tell me no slaves knew the Bible? Next source. Critical thinking. I'm going to start using that. Critical thinking.
The first source is from A History of the Inquisition of Spain by Henry Charles
This is important.
Lee on page 141.
Mm-hmm.
In the confusion following the invasion of Charles VIII in 1495, the people arose against them, the Jews, and many abandoned their religion to escape slaughter or slavery. Many were carried off to distant lands and sold as slaves.
So the Jews of Spain are being persecuted, kicked out, sold in distant lands as slaves. Okay, continue.
The second source is from the Jew in the Medieval World, a source book, 315 to 1791, from Jacob Rader Marcus. All Spanish Jews who were still in Portugal in 1493 were enslaved by King John, and his reign was from 1481 to 1495.
Mm-hmm.
The children were sent to the Isle of St. Thomas off the coast of Africa.
So they were sent to St. Thomas off the coast of Africa. They were also sent to Cape Verde. Okay? This is where the expulsion of the Jews of Spain began to happen. Watch this. Next source.
This is the Iberian roots of the transatlantic slave trade.
Iberian roots. Hebrew roots. This is what it's saying, literally. Iberian Hebrew. Hebrew roots of the transatlantic slave trade. Go ahead.
From 1440 to 1640.
Mm-hmm.
From Gilderman.org.
Mind you, we didn't even touch the west coast of Africa yet. We didn't even touch pre-Columbian America yet. We didn't touch that part yet. We still on the medieval Jews. We're still here. I'm just saying. Yeah.
It's the Institute of American History.
The Institute of American History. I'm not making this up. Watch this. Read.
The first slave trade voyage.
The first slave trade voyage. Go ahead.
Known to have sailed directly from Africa to the Americas arrived in Santo Domingo on the island Española in 1525. The ship's cargo consisted of nearly 200 captives purchased in Sao Tome,
which is St. Thomas. Who was sent to St. Thomas? Jews of Europe. And then they were taken from that place and then brought as slaves to America. Watch this. Read.
Several additional slave ships disembarked enslaved Africans in Hispaniola, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica during the late 1520s and 1530s.
You see that? Next source. I believe it's done now. I think we're in West Africa. Oh, Salakia, we not. We still not in West Africa. We still not in West Africa. Go ahead.
This is charter granted by Emperor Charles V to Lorenzo de Gorvad for permission to transport slaves. Spain August 18th, 1518,
Mhm.
courtesy of the Archival General de Indias, Sevilla, Spain.
Mhm.
Before 1518, the slave trade was highly regulated and consisted mostly of slaves being sent from Spain to the Americas.
From Spain to the Americas, they were sending slaves. Who were they sending? We just read it in the previous slide. Black Jews, Moors. Go ahead.
Directly by the Spanish government.
Mhm.
However, Emperor Charles V opened the transatlantic slave trade on a massive scale on August 18th, 1518,
Mhm.
when he granted a charter to Lorenzo de Gorva, giving him permission to transport 4,000 slaves directly from Africa to Spanish American colonies. He circumvented the legal statute established by Fernando and Isabel that slaves must be born in Spain by allowing Africans to enter the Americas, provided they convert during the voyage.
See that? And you see the document right on top. Next source. Can't make this up. Huh? Now you see the book on top. This is the history of the Inquisition. You can start right where it says King Emmanuel.
King Emmanuel was succeeded by John III. In 1521, who, observing that Judaism was spread greatly in his time, that the Jews publicly professed their errors and taught them others, that his holy Doneflict servants not only as such proceeded from them, but those who were ancient Christians were infected with the portion of their doctrine, contemned the sacraments of the church, did not receive them in an article of death, treated with great irreverence holy images, and especially from the Virgin Mother of God, the Lady of Angels.
Some of the Virgin Mother of God.
They are the words of
Safna?
yes.
Sansa. Because remember, this is old, so that the S's are F's. So it's a little confusing. This is old.
These things in his mind,
Mhm.
he desired the Pope Clement VII, the holy tribunal of the Inquisition in his kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And although this Pope, for a long while and oftentimes refused it through the vigorous endeavors of the Jews, who to their utmost opposed the royal petition, for the Jews always hated this holy tribunal, as others do to this day. For what reason they less know. Yet at length, with difficulty, he granted it in form of law. And that would be the source of the date of January the 16th, 1531.
So this is showing what? They were forcing Jews to convert to Catholicism. I just wanted to show y'all these things. Right? And not keep the laws of God. This is what began to happen in Europe. Okay? The next source. Go ahead.
This is from the Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph J. Williams. The massacre of the Jews that at Tuat took place in 1492, the very year that the Moors were driven out of Granada, and the previous influence of the Jewish people, especially in the north of Africa, may explain why the Dominicans, when they undertook mission work in Africa in the 13th century, required of their missionaries a knowledge of Hebrew as well as Arabic. Mm-hmm. Another possible explanation of this might be also that while Ghana itself was finally destroyed in 1240, the remnants of the Jewish Empire were still scattered throughout the Sudan.
So this is showing, right? This is showing Jews of Europe and Jews of West Africa. This is now, I know where I'm at now. This is getting us ready for the next portion, right? Go ahead.
The next source is the Inquisition Revealed on page 148.
Mm-hmm.
The Roman Catholics,
I think I spelled that wrong. Go ahead. Slacking.
Ignorant of the nature of the gospel, have endeavored wholly to destroy this people or to compel them to profess the Christian faith. Edicts, the most severe and cruel, have been published against them from time to time by different popes in France and Spain. They have been oppressed, fined, and banished unless they would turn Christians. Thousands of them in Spain and Portugal profess the name of Christ to escape punishment, yet in heart remaining Jews, abhorring the idolatry of papists. The inquisitors proceeded against them, therefore, as heretics and apostates.
Now, this is what was happening to our people in Europe. Okay? That was leading up to the age of discovery, Christopher Columbus, the exploration of the New World, conquering of the Northern Kingdom, so on and so forth. All right?